Who is Snoke? Where did he come from? How is he so powerful? Why did he seduce Ben? How did he seduce Ben Solo? A lot of unanswered questions that we were left with after The Force Awakens, and unfortunately Last Jedi did not answer them. And in my opinion, Snoke is kind of a broken character, so I'm going to go through what I would have done had I been in charge of Episode 7 and, in turn, Episode 8. Stay tuned. So Snoke was first introduced as this huge hologram. We didn't know if he was a giant or if it was just the hologram projecting him to being bigger than life, and he was very mysterious. You know, he seemed threatening, and it was a great way to introduce like a character like that. He said he'd been around a long time. He had seen the rise and the fall of the Empire, and knew of Vader, who Vader was somehow. Also Palpatine. So there left a lot to be explored there. A lot of interest. Some people didn't like the character of Snoke, even in Force Awakens. I thought, had they done it right, it could have been a great character. Unfortunately, they followed up with Last Jedi, and he was killed halfway through the movie. No explanation as to who he was. We don't know anything about him other than somehow he seduced Ben Solo into the dark side, although he wasn't a Sith, so a lot of unanswered questions. One of the major issues is, to me, it seems like he is kind of just a copy of the Emperor. They wanted a big threatening character, and they didn't really know what to do or how to write one. So they're like, well, let's just make this guy who seems even more scary and more powerful than the Emperor. He's been around a long time, so he knows about the Emperor, Palpatine. But they didn't really have a place to go with it. JJ kind of came up with this idea and left it to Rian Johnson and I guess others to figure out, well, who is he and why is he so powerful? Why have we never heard about him before? And, Ryan's answer was, nope, not gonna do it. Just write him off, kill him halfway through the movie. We don't need to know who he is or where he came from. And that's a huge mistake. It's a mistake. It goes back to the very poison that is running through this trilogy, and that's that it's just not coherent. There's no strategy, there's no real plan. It seems they're kind of just writing it as they go and trying to figure out things later. So this brings me to a thought I had, what I would do with Snoke, or who I would have made him. And I guess it kind of changes the story in general, but I think that's okay because I think it'd be better. So I was watching the Clone Wars. I'm going through and rewatching them again. Just it's been a while, and I started watching them before they announced the new 12-episode mini season that they're going to do. So I was super excited because I've already been kind of rewatching all the Clone Wars anyway. And there's a 3-episode arc in season 3, and it deals with this planet sort of called Mortis, and it's like a sort of a big pyramid type or double-sided pyramid type of structure. It's not really a planet, but when you go inside of it, it seems like a planet, and it seems to be like the Force itself or part of the Force. It's a little different than the Wills, which is another story arc that is in the end of the Clone Wars, the few last episodes that they released on Netflix. So it's a different kind of story, but Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka get called, they have this distress signal where they get called to this Mortis, this place, this planet, so to speak. And they land, and it's a very mystical place. And there are 3 entities that live there. And one is called the Father. There's the Son and the Daughter. And the Daughter is a very light side of the Force wielder. She sort of embodies the light side. The Son is the dark side of the Force, and the Father is this balance in between both of them. And they have powers that have not been seen before by Jedi. They seem to have like super, Jedi power or super Force powers. And the whole plot of getting them to go to this planet was so that the Father needed a replacement. He was, I guess, getting old. It seems like they're sort of immortal, but it's unknown. So the Father was getting old and wanted Anakin, as being the chosen one, and they were aware of this, to come and take his place and be the balance. As the prophecy says, he'll bring balance to the Force. So it's a really interesting version of that prophecy. Most people thought it was, or think that it's him overthrowing the Emperor in the end of Return of the Jedi, which brought balance, which I still do hold to. But this really kind of adds just a deeper level of depth to that prophecy. So he fights Anakin in this series, fights himself, fights the light side, the dark side. He's shown to be able to control both and balance both of them. And I just thought, how much more unique and what a great story or character had Snoke been somehow involved with, either been, if they had written him to be the son or possibly the father, although I think probably if the father was getting old, that might not work out, but had he been the son who was aware that Anakin had failed and was trying then to go after Ben, and that's why Ben was seduced, by this the son figure of the this entity, this dark side entity. Would have been so much more interesting. It would have given a lot more purpose. It would have connected way more connectivity to the prequels and also to Clone Wars. Again, I think if Dave Filoni had been in charge, we probably would have seen this stuff because he would have connected all these things together. I think, maybe the Snoke, had they written a character like Snoke, he would have been possibly the son, or the father. But I think seeing that Snoke was a villain, a dark side wielder, I think it would have been much more interesting to have him be the son, and to have the reason of seducing Ben as being, because he knew Ben was a relation or relative of Anakin. So it would have been way more, it made more sense to go after him and seduce him, and it would have given a good backstory to this Snoke-like character who we know nothing about and seems to be unimportant. But that's the problem with when you have people. I mean, JJ did I still really like Force Awakens, and he did a good job with the movie. It was a great setup film, but when you don't have the love and the lore of Star Wars, when you don't know the connectivity between the Clone Wars series, the prequel era stuff, it's all very just surface connectivity, and you bring in or you write new characters that could have been written in a much more important way that would have really tied things together more strongly. It would have gotten fans way more engaged into, if Snoke we found out was the son character or this other kind of entity that was sort of the Force himself. Then you could have had Luke, instead of having Luke been being kind of like a bum the whole movie, you could have him go after Ben to try to save him. And then taking on, you could have Luke taking on this dark side son character, this figure, this entity, which would have been very cool. Ben would have been kind of maybe caught in the middle of being seduced by kind of like he is now. He's seduced by the dark side, but he still feels the pull to the light. And you could have had Luke going after him to save him. I don't know where Rey would have fit in on this. I guess you could still have a Rey character that would have been along with Luke, because then you could have still the Rey and Kylo fight each other, but have a little more pull to the light side with Ben. Have Luke kind of trying to save Ben instead of going after him. And I don't know what he was trying to do in Last Jedi. He didn't really try to kill him because he never really went to Crate, but he wasn't really trying to save him either. It would have given Luke a better purpose. It would have had him fight this entity, which would have been a great battle. Luke could have sacrificed himself still. He could have sacrificed his life, but maybe in a way that showed him saving Ben. He sacrificed himself, even though Ben was along with this entity and still had the dark side in him. Luke, because Luke is Luke, the classic Luke that we love, not the Last Jedi Luke, not Jake Skywalker, the Luke Skywalker. We could have had him sacrifice himself to still try to save Ben, and then you would have had, in the next movie, you'd have Rey maybe able to bring Ben back, or maybe Rey ends up falling to the dark side, and Ben comes back to the light side, and then they take on this, this son character, this entity, together, or it would have been a lot. I just think it would have been a better story. It would have had Luke doing more. You could have kept Luke more true to his character. You would have had this, the Snoke character as a way more interesting character that could have permeated throughout the whole series, but also, throughout the whole universe, the whole lore, tied right back into the Clone Wars. So let me know what you guys think. Have you seen the episodes? There's 3 of them. It's Alter Mortis was the second one. I think Ghost of Mortis was the third one, and Overlords was the first one, the first episode of this arc. So have you guys seen these? If you haven't, check them out. They're really cool stories. Anakin gets to see a bit of his future. I just think tying that into the new series or the new trilogy would have been amazing. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, and if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. and subscribe to see more content. And until next time, lock the door and hope they don't have blasters.